Alright, I'm going on a rampage today. So, I'm a fan of Beastars.
Duh, nigga.
I've read the manga multiple times, and now I've seen the anime all the way through, and... Look, I'm just gonna be real. That ending was absolute trash. So let's go back to the beginning. Season 1 of Beastars is really, really good. And obviously, if you have any interest in watching Beastars and you haven't yet, there are going to be a lot of spoilers in this. You should have figured that out by now. But anyway, yeah. Season 1, really, really good. Almost a perfect adaptation of the manga, but then because it's an anime, there are multiple things that were changed that I kind of liked. Just the nature of it being in motion and having the vocal performances and the music. But Season 1 is really, really good. It's almost self-contained. Obviously, there are multiple things that aren't completely resolved in the first season, which is why there's more of the manga and then more of the show. But you could watch the first season and still be pretty darn satisfied with where that goes, even if you don't go beyond that. Season 2 is still pretty darn good. It's a pretty good adaptation of the second major arc in the manga. There are a few things that they cut out, but for the most part, pretty darn good. Season 3, which is the final season, part 1, I enjoyed. It ended on a major cliffhanger, and I was wondering, okay, where are they going with this? Because there were a lot of things that they cut out, and there were multiple things that they brought in, and certain things that didn't bother me so much. They introduced an energy drink called Kines, which was, essentially that was a replacement for the BB drug, which shows up in the manga, but it just disappears. It shows up once, and then it just disappears after that. It's basically just a means for Yaya to become aware of Legoshi in the manga. After that, it completely fucking disappears. So I don't mind that they replaced that with the Kines energy drink, which also seems like it would be a little bit easier to distribute that to people without them knowing that it's a drug. So I kind of like that. For the most part, Season 3, or the final season, Part 1, is fine. It's pretty darn good. Part 2... there were things that I liked. They added back in some things that I liked, but they also cut a lot of stuff. They pretty much completely reordered a lot of events. There are things that it's all kind of mixed up in terms of where certain things happen. There were entire characters that they cut. There were new subplots that they introduced. And I was along for the ride, but then toward the end, I'm thinking, you don't have a lot of time left. Like, how are you going to resolve all of this? Before they actually put up the final season, I was wondering, okay, is it just going to be 12, 24-minute episodes where, the first couple minutes and the last couple minutes are just the opening song and the ending song? So it's like 20 minutes of actual show? Or are they going to make the episodes longer, or is the final episode going to be an hour long or 2 hours long? Nope, it was just the 24 minutes, 12 episodes. The moment I saw that, I was very, very worried. I was concerned about that beforehand. Originally, Part 2 was supposed to come out only a couple months after Part 1, and they delayed it to now, so it's a year later, and I thought, okay, maybe they've made some changes. Maybe they've taken into consideration that people didn't like how the manga ended, because it was pretty disappointing. There were a lot of things that kind of rushed to a conclusion. There were characters who showed up who didn't really have much to do. Like, for people who haven't read the manga but have seen the anime all the way through, Melon's father is a character, but he disappears about as quickly as he shows up, and he contributes nothing. So he's alive, but he disappears about as quickly as he shows up. So that was completely fucking pointless. Kiyu, the rabbit, was a character who did have more going on, but by the end of the manga, she really didn't have much to do. In the anime, they just show pictures of her. Probably because the animators are like, well, she's hot, and we wanted to draw her, so, fair enough. So for the most part, throughout the final season, it's like, okay, I'm along for the ride, but then you get down to the last couple episodes and I'm getting worried. For good reason. The last episode, that's when everything fell apart, because this is when you have to conclude everything. And you could easily have spent the entire last episode on just giving an epilogue for everything. I'm not saying it needed to be like the final season of Stranger Things where it's an hour-long epilogue, although you could have done that, but just, you could have spent that whole final episode on wrapping everything up especially improving upon the way that the manga did things. But instead what they did was they basically copied the ending from the manga that nobody liked, and they made it fucking worse! How? How did they make it fucking worse? Wolf angry! I don't get it! I don't understand how they could fuck it up that bad. So, if you haven't watched any of Beastars, and it seems like it would be interesting to you, I do recommend it. Like I said, at the very least, the first season. It's a beautiful anime. The music is amazing. I actually, for multiple years, have wanted to make a video just about the music, because it is so good. It's not just that it sounds nice, it's how they use the music. The fact that there are different themes for characters, there are different motifs that they use. They actually combine character themes in certain situations. The music is just really, really good, and I would like to make that video still. Anyway, this is about the anime, and specifically the finale. Specifically, I mean, most of it comes down to that final episode. Just absolutely fucking terrible. But even throughout the season, there were things that they added that they then just didn't pay off. Why? Why would you do that? One of the things that they added was now the drama club is going to do the Meteorite Festival again. They built that up. They built that up so much. Like, oh my god, we're going to do the Meteorite Festival. We fought so hard to get into it. We have this performance. There's this whole thing where there's a conflict between Juno and Pina, where, you know, now their roles have been swapped. Juno is going to play the herbivore, and Pina is going to play the carnivore. Like, okay, that's actually kind of interesting and thematically relevant. I don't mind this addition. And then you don't get to fucking see the performance. They build that up, and then you don't get to see it. Like, the epilogue for this is in the credits. It's just a voiceover where they show you little bits and pieces of the things that they set up and didn't pay off. Like, one thing that is different from the manga, in the manga, it's teased that Lewis and Juno are going to have a relationship. You know, it's sort of will they, won't they, because Lewis is the heir to the Horns conglomerate, and he has an arranged marriage, but, you know, he doesn't want to be with Azuki, his wife, but he clearly has a crush on Juno, and Juno has a crush on him. And, you know, it would be narratively satisfying for them to get together. In the manga, they kind of tease that, and then at the very end, he just solidifies, well, you know, I have to stay with my wife, and basically it's kind of like breaking up even though they were never together. And Juno just leaves and says, well, you'll never be satisfied unless you can kiss somebody who has fangs, basically. It's unsatisfying, but it was kind of, it felt like it was left open-ended, like, okay, there could be more there. In the anime, it's even worse, because they add more. They add more scenes that hint that their relationship might actually have a satisfying conclusion, that it might, even if it just ended with teasing that they are going to be in a relationship, it hinted more of that than what was in the manga, but then it just ends in the credits with them saying bye, and she just walks away. Like, there's no dialogue, but there's like no conversation. It's just bye, bye, and she walks away, and that's it. That's how they end it. They actually added more to build up their relationship, only to conclude it in a less satisfying way than what the manga did. Why? Why the fuck would you do that? It makes no sense. Like I said, just like the performance, why would you build all that up? You'd have all this screen time, all this shit that you added to the story, and then you don't pay it off. It just shows them on stage and it says, well, they were able to they did their performance later on and it was cool. Like, great. Would have been nice to see that, though. Why did we waste time building all this up and then not see it? It doesn't make any sense. And then, I mean, the whole final battle was so abrupt, because in the manga, you have, I mean, yeah, there's some kind of problems with it, but it works sort of thematically. Legoshi shows up with mixed blood from him and Lewis, which in the anime, they introduce this element that when you mix the blood, it coagulates, and so you need an anticoagulant, and it just a bunch of extra shit that really didn't need to be in there. But in the manga, he mixes the blood together, he lights it on fire, and that draws attention to him, and everybody's like, oh, what's that? That's an interesting smell, because it's herbivore and carnivore blood mixed together. Well, they completely cut that out, so you don't have the scene with Lewis and Legoshi putting their blood into the jar And, it just seems thematically appropriate that they did that. They completely cut that. Lugosi, he fights the Dokugumi. They kind of cut that short. Then they cut out the whole him dressing in drag to fight the leader at 10 from the Inarigumi. And then he has the final battle with Melon. And that ends kind of abruptly. There's, like I said, there's the whole thing with his father, who Melon thinks his father is dead. And they basically don't tell him that he's still alive and that he's just a deadbeat dad. So his character really didn't need to exist. And Melon, he shoots himself twice, but survives. At the end of the manga, he has received a bunch of fan mail, which, because that was another thing that they cut in the anime. They built up in the manga how much people really liked Melon. That, they were selling melon-flavored things inside and outside the black market. His name was everywhere. He was really, really popular. So his influence was taking over the city. And it's like, okay, well, we need to do something about that. Yaya and Gosha are concerned about that. Lewis and Lugosi are concerned about that. It makes sense that, okay, we need to counter the influence of this dangerous psychopath. But they didn't do any of that in the anime. And like I said, just right at the very end, Melon just shoots himself one time. Lugosi he has a little bit of a fight with them, but it ends really abruptly. And then Melon kind of teases, oh, hey, I left a surprise for you at the Meteorite Festival, which that was not in the manga. I don't mind that they tried to bring that back, but oh my god, now we got to get into this. So, okay, for one thing, in the manga, Ogma, Lewis's father, dies, and it's a really sad moment. So then Lewis becomes the head of the Horns conglomerate, and in the manga, it ends with him having a press conference where he specifically wants to address the black market, and he wants to talk about how we shouldn't be so upset at carnivores for wanting to eat meat because it is their nature. And he's trying to find a way to balance this, which then in the manga, what ends up happening is herbivores and carnivores end up destroying the black market. They come together and they destroy all the buildings. In the anime, the mayor has a plan to demolish the black market, which obviously doesn't really go anywhere. That's something that's going to happen. And they want to do that because they're bringing the Olympics, in the anime it's the Zoo Olympics, to the city. And so they want to kind of clear that out, that negative element, so that the city looks better. That doesn't really go anywhere. But also part of what they're doing to try and win the bid to have the Animal Olympics come to their city is they want to introduce a meat substitute, which is presented as like, yeah, this is basically lab-grown meat. So it doesn't involve killing anything. But then the secret is revealed. Oh no, it's made from embryos. So it's basically just cheating. They lied about how it was made. And this all involves, like, the mayor is blackmailing Lewis's father with records of, black market records of Lewis from when he was a fawn. So, like, okay, he doesn't want people to find out that I bought Lewis at the black market. And so the mayor is blackmailing him with that. So Lewis ends up admitting publicly that he was bought at the black market, but that's right at the end of the series, so that doesn't really have any consequences. The whole meat substitute thing doesn't come back at all. They have the Kopi Luwak in the final season, in part 1 and part 2, which is a real thing, by the way. But in the context of the show, it's this type of coffee that triggers meat cravings in carnivores. That doesn't really get used much at all in the show. They actually introduce a new drug that is supposed to be way more potent, called Melda. They introduce it, and then you never see the effects of it until the very end of the final episode, where the mayor, there's like a ball of it in his water, and he accidentally consumes it when he drinks the water, and then he goes crazy. But it doesn't really seem any different than like the Kines or the Kopi Luwak, or what. It's not any worse, like we were led to believe. So then he goes crazy and tries to attack Lewis, but then Lugosi shows up right at the right moment to attack the mayor, bites him in the neck, but the mayor survives. And while Lugosi is there with a bloody mouth, everybody's like, oh, yeah, by the way, I forgot to mention, he is a wanted criminal in this. He was framed for murder, even though there was no proof that he actually committed it, other than the fact that he was at the scene. So he was framed for murder, And, Lugosi's, like, on the run. So when he shows up in the middle of all this and he just attacked the fucking mayor, who, to be fair, was going crazy, now everybody thinks he's insane, and then Haru comes out and kisses him with his bloody fucking mouth. And then it's like, oh, okay, no, he's a good guy. And Yaya just shows up out of nowhere like, he's innocent. And everybody's like, yeah, all right, he's innocent. The end. And I don't want the world to see me, 'cause I don't think that they'd understand. That's it. That's where it fucking ends. All that is just wrapped up. I mean, there's so many things that I'm probably forgetting, but they introduce so much shit and then just rush the conclusion, and oh my man, there's so much. Ugh! The insane thing was just that they added so much and they cut out so much, but then the stuff that they added really didn't end up going anywhere. Like I said, the whole meat substitute thing, they forgot about that entirely, which then, if you've read the manga, you should also know they completely cut out the whole thing with the whale, which was a little weird because it didn't end up going anywhere in the manga, but it was at least a little bit interesting. There's this ancient whale who ended the first carnivore-herbivore world war by offering them meat from the sea, which made sense in the context of the manga because Sagwan, the spotted seal character, explains that in the ocean, you eat and are eaten, so their philosophy is completely different, so the sea animals wouldn't really care if land carnivores ate the meat of sea animals. So that was proposed as a solution at the very end of the manga, and then Yaya just kind of says, nah, we're good. But in this, all that is cut, and they reference the conflict, the first war between herbivores and carnivores, but they don't actually explain it. Man, ugh. And there are things that I really liked that they cut. Like, they cut out Lugosi meeting Haru's family. He goes and he has dinner with them, and it's a really kind of nice scene. And then Haru's father drives him home, and they have a little interaction, and it's nice. It's like, yeah, if you want to be with her long term, it's kind of nice that he gets to meet her family. But then they swapped that for Haru meeting Gosha, which I realized, like, okay, I like this. And then they use that as a way for him to explain the backstory for why his wife is no longer around, which that was fine. They rushed it a little bit. Of course, they also rushed the whole thing with Lugosi's mother. It was still nice, but they kind of cut out part of it that would have been more meaningful. It was just, oh my God, there was... I'm probably not even... I've only watched through part 2 once now. So I know there's a lot that I've forgotten, but holy shit, I can't believe that they fucked this up so bad, because the opportunity was there to have a really good ending, because clearly Paru Itagaki, who wrote and drew the manga, she clearly realized that the ending of the manga was not super satisfying, because for anyone who doesn't know, at the end of the manga, the last page is Haru finally admitting publicly that her and Lugosi are in a relationship. That's it. That's how it ends. After all that time, if you watch the first season and then you find out that only at the end of what is essentially the 4th season does she finally acknowledge in public that they're in a relationship, you think, what the fuck? Like, how is that development? How in the hell have you had all this time and that's all the further you got? Well, they do that in the anime. They end it with that scene in the anime. And it's, what I was talking about is Paru clearly realized that was just not the best ending for those characters, because in Beast Complex, I can't remember if it's Beast Complex 1 or 2, which was like a spin-off manga, there's a segment where both of them go to a purification ceremony, and it's like this thing between carnivores and herbivores. If a carnivore attacked an herbivore, they make amends. It's like sort of a way of apologizing for attacking them, and it's perfect because they dress up really nice, so it's almost like an unofficial marriage ceremony between the two of them, and then it brings it all the way back to how they first met. When Lugosi first attacked Haru, he scratched her arm, and this is bringing it all the way back to that, because The purification ceremony is about him addressing that he attacked her and atoning for that. And like I said, it's sort of an unofficial marriage ceremony. It was just a really good way to conclude their arc. And that's how the anime should have ended. They absolutely should have expanded this last season, this part 2. You could have easily made each episode an hour long, or at the very least made the final episode an hour long, if not 2 hours long. And you could have dealt with the setup you had between Juno and Lewis, where it looks like they're going to be in a relationship. Maybe you could establish that they are definitely going to be in a relationship instead of ending it worse than you did in the manga. You could have shown some of the other characters. You could have shown the performance happening that you spent time building up. You could have actually given a conclusion to Gosha and to Yaya. And you could have had that purification ceremony to tie up the arc with Legoshi and Haru. You could have just basically used hindsight. You knew that people did not like the way that the manga ended. And if you look at it, there are a lot of problems. Like I said, there are characters who were introduced who just disappear. There are plot points introduced that disappear. The ending of the manga, it's not terrible, but it has a lot of problems. And you had multiple years of hindsight to make that better. And they just didn't. They went, you know what? I've got a great idea. Let's end it the same way the manga did, but make it worse. Let's rush it. Even more than it was already rushed. Let's basically wrap everything up in the credits for the anime. Oh my fucking god. I just, I can't believe that they fucked it up this bad. And I didn't, it kind of surprised me. I mean, it shouldn't have surprised me how much it pissed me off. I just realized, well, of course it would piss me off. I have the entire manga series. I have a bunch of Beastars shirts. I love the fucking music. Everybody in my family knows that I'm crazy about Beastars. And it's just because it spoke to me. This is a completely different world that to me is really fascinating. The way that carnivores and herbivores have to deal with each other in this world is so interesting to me. It's like Zootopia, but way darker and way more serious. And it fascinated me. And I related to Legoshi as a character. Even though we're completely different people, I related to him because, I feel like that sometimes. I'm incredibly socially awkward. I feel misunderstood. There are particular things about me that make it more relatable for me. It meant a lot to me. I really enjoyed watching the show and reading the manga. There's just so much that I liked. And the reason why people love satisfying stories is because, they get invested in the characters because they imagine themselves going through these trials. They imagine themselves going on these journeys. The reason why so many stories have good endings, it's not that you can't have an unhappy ending, but the reason why people want happy endings is because they want a happy ending in their own life. They want the main character to get what they deserve. If they're a good person, they want them to have a happy conclusion where, like in this case, it would be that Legoshi and Haru, they end up together and they have a bright future and society looks like it's heading in the right direction. There are fewer devourings. We're figuring things out. People are figuring out how to work together. Interspecies relationships are becoming more common. But at the core of it, it's that people get invested in these characters and in these conflicts because they imagine themselves going through these conflicts. They imagine themselves experiencing these things. So, of course, they want it to end positively because no stable person is thinking, you know where I want my life to go? Down the fucking tubes. I want it to suck. I want to be depressed. I want things to just fall apart. No, nobody wants that. They want a happy ending. They want to feel like in their life they could meet the right person and be happy with that person and have a pleasant life. And, a lot of people would love to be a hero that makes the world better, that goes out and fights dangerous, maniacal forces and triumphs in the end and, has a positive impact on society, gets rewarded for that. Of course, a lot of people want that. So it matters how you conclude these stories. And if you just rush the conclusion, if you say, okay, these two characters who we were teasing a relationship with, they don't get a fucking relationship, that's just over. They just say bye and that's it. These other characters who maybe we kind of teased a relationship a little bit, like with Bill and Els, they kind of teased that a little bit. That obviously doesn't go anywhere. Just a lot of the characters don't have a satisfying conclusion. And then, again, at the very end of the anime, just like with the manga, the farthest that we've gotten with the two main characters, the most important relationship in the entire story, the farthest we've got is just her acknowledging that, yeah, they're a couple. That's it. That's the end. I mean, I guess you could say technically he proposed to her before that, but it really doesn't carry much weight in the manga, and it carries even less weight in the last 20 seconds of the fucking anime. Oh my god. But of course people want this to end in a satisfying way. That's why they got invested. That's why they cared about these characters. That's why they cared about these conflicts, because they wanted it to end in a good way, where they feel like every character kind of got what they deserved. And they just didn't do that. The manga did a better job, but still had a lot of problems. The anime fucked it up so hard. And everywhere I look, it just seems like a lot of people agree with that. A lot of people feel the same way. They feel disappointed. Man, I want to know what the hell they were thinking. I want to know why they thought this was a good way to conclude it, because there's so much effort put into it. The animation has always been really good. The music has always been really good. The voice acting has always been really good, and that's me speaking with the original Japanese voice acting. I've heard people say that they really like the dub, but I couldn't get into it because when I first watched it, it was before the dub came out, so I just got used to the original voice actors. But, the voice acting is really good, music's really good, animation is really good. Just visually, a beautiful show. It had funny moments, it had heartwarming moments. I fell in love with it so much. And season 2 was pretty darn good, but it left a little bit of a bitter taste in my mouth with the way that it ended. Season 3, I was like, okay, I'm with you, but I'm wondering where this is going to go because you've cut out so much. And then this final season it had me hopeful at the beginning, and then it just fucked it at the end so hard. They rushed to the end. I don't know how the hell they thought that was good. And I don't know if it was Netflix screwing them, but even then, Netflix can't take all the blame. Because if you knew that you only had 12 episodes, then you should have just cut out certain things that didn't need to be in the final season, or even cut things from part 1 so that you could take some stuff you wanted to show in part 2, put it in part 1, and then free up more space at the end so you could have had a more satisfying conclusion. So even if they were restricted in terms of how many episodes they could do and not being able to make the final episode longer, they still could have done it in such a way where the ending was not rushed. Because like I said, it just kind of ends, and then everything gets wrapped up in the fucking credits in like 30 seconds. It's so terrible. And the best I can hope for is that this gets like a Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood treatment, where somewhere down the road they make it again and they make it better. You wouldn't even really need to redo season 1 and 2. Maybe just redo the final season. Just make it longer, bring in more things from the manga that were good, leave out things or change things. The funny thing is, you almost could have made it work if it weren't for the last episode or 2, where you just rush everything. If you just made those longer, you could patch it. You could save it. There still would have been problems, but you could save it. Man, watching that ruined my day. I did not realize how much this show meant to me, how much just Beastars in general meant to me, until I watched that final episode and got so pissed off by how poorly it was handled. And it's not just, some people might think, oh, well, are you just angry because you're a really big fan of it, because you're comparing it to the manga? No, objectively, it was poorly handled. Somebody who had no idea, who had never read the manga and wasn't a super fan, if they watched that conclusion, they'd be like, yeah, that was pretty bad, because it's so rushed. It's so unsatisfying. Like I said, I mean, just the fact that there are multiple things they set up that they just don't even reference. That's an objective problem. That they introduce these things and then just don't mention them. They just forget that they even fucking happened. I mean, it was handled terribly. Anyway, I could keep going. I really wanted to get these thoughts out there. I realize it's just a long fucking obnoxious rant, but fuck, I needed to vent my frustrations about this. Like I said, best I can hope for is that they fix it in the future. I don't really think that would happen, but it would be really nice because I do care a lot about this universe, and they did it dirty, man. They fucked it up so bad. It felt like the house was on fire, and I'm just looking around trying to save things from it. I'm like, well, I still have the first season, and the second season is still pretty good, and I do still like the music, and, you know, like I'm trying to salvage things from it as it's falling apart. It just, oh, fuck. Anyway, I'm Drachona, and try to have a nice day. Like I said, if you haven't watched Beastars at all, at least check out the first season. It's pretty damn good.